new leaves.
Yeah, we just moved this one maybe like a week or
It's happy. Look at that.
2 ago. Awesome.
So cool.
Yeah, it was in the middle of that,
yeah, I
which
remember
was
seeing that.
really nice, but it was kind of just growing up one of these sunflowers that
Yeah.
might not even be
It's
there
not
anymore.
sustainable.
And yeah, so the sunflower was just getting pulled down, and
Nice.
this wasn't doing so well. But anyways, I think this is going again.
It's
Yep,
okay?
this
Okay.
is going again. Cool.
So there was a confluence that happened. It was so the sustainability studies student found out that Physical Plant was going to remove the Guerrilla Garden because it hadn't been approved, and so he was very media savvy actually, and he contacted the Daily Lobo and said, "Hey, this is a story. There's a Guerrilla Garden here. It's going to be removed," and got his friends together. Everyone brought instruments. They had a transplant party. And it was covered on the front page of the Daily Lobo, and I don't know, I wasn't there, but I heard the Physical Plant arrived, saw this happening, I was like, okay, we're leaving. So it was this front page story at the same time that the social movements class was trying to get approval for a garden on campus. And at the same time that Seeds of Rebellion was asking for
I wonder
space.
like what the I don't know, the timing of the days was in
Right.
relation to all of that.
Right. And I think that, there's no planning between these three parties. It was more of a confluence. I mean, I think that's how change often happens, right? Is we don't realize that many of us in many different sectors and walks are going towards the same thing.
Right. There's like this aspect of synchronicity where everyone's sort of working on the general zeitgeist, and then it occurs in one way or another.
It finally happens,
Yeah.
right? So, so approvals came, and the Red Garden, which stands for Real Estate Department, but also the Red of Lobos and UNM, came to be, and we also got approval to use the Hakona site where the Guerrilla Garden had been, so we started with those two gardens or spaces in 2010, and
Awesome.
And that's when the first Lobo Gardens class was taught that summer, and I taught it with the Research Service Learning Program, and had a bunch of very hardy people sign up for the class, including Bertha, the administrator here at Red, and we worked with the community, we worked with the Physical Plant, we worked with landscaping, we worked with arborists, we worked with I think it was Home Depot in Los Lunas, we worked with the neighborhood, and so a big part of that experience was to say, well, how can we create all the connections that need to be created so that everyone feels this is theirs, and that this is something that they'd like to see thrive and flourish. And so it wasn't just digging up the soil, which we needed to do, and bringing in compost, which we needed to do, but it was also how do you create a whole space of kind of fertile readiness for something among the people and the land.
Yeah, there's these essential ingredients, whether that's soil, seeds, sunlight. I mean, that's all generally here, but it sounds like there's an aspect of community that you're getting at
absolutely.
In terms of like the sustainability of the garden.
Right, it's not a farm, it's a community garden. And I think that's a really important thing to understand what's the difference, right? So a farm is wonderful, and it's a place you want to produce a lot of produce, right? You want to like really feed a lot of people. We don't have the kind of space for that. We don't have the kind of staff for that. And we're not an agricultural school. It would be great if eventually we had a farm on campus, and we should. But the community garden approach is very different, which is it is about food, and it is about healthy food and access to food. But it's also about experimentation. It's about community first and foremost, education, and so we're using this space as a place where people can learn from the land, learn from each other, learn from the plants, learn from the community at large, and educate one another. So 2010, we came in here with some horses, and
that must have been fun for the real estate department.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember how it all worked out, but I think Bertha was involved with the horses in some way. I think she had access.
She rode the horses through the garden.
She was our hero.
Yeah.
She, I think it might have been a relative. I don't remember exactly how it all worked, but we brought in horses. We brought in a lot of manure, And
horses and manure go well together.
They go great together. The class laid out this whole plan of leveling, and my memory is they worked with landscaping to do that, because we needed to figure out how to keep the water at every level and how we could use the space best to create a sense of an invitational space, but also to create a space that will grow food well. And so we spent that summer just making this a place to plant things, and it was only at the very end of the class that we actually put plants in the soil. And
I mean, you got to prepare the soil so much before you can actually even put the plants in if you want them to do well there.
Right. And this was like, it had stuff dumped on it. It had, there were all sorts of things we dug out of it. This, interestingly, the red garden is on the path. This is where Mountain used to go, Mountain Road.
Really?
And so Mountain Road was built on the path.
Mountain used to be south of Lomas? Or they intersected, perhaps?
Mountain, yeah. I mean, it wasn't linear, right?
Yeah.
So it was linear, but it wasn't straight. So it meandered and it went through the pass eventually.
Gotcha.
Right. It went from Rio Grande to the pass.
Okay, that's why Mountain's name is Mountain.
Exactly.
I get it.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So to the south of the Sandia Range. So the one that we now have I-40 and 14 going through.
So this probably would have even connected to Carlito Springs then.
Yeah.
Places like that, and I know that was like horse carriage place.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so we dug some stuff up here that was probably from that time period. So this historic stuff. So here's this path that went through here, and now here we are planting food. It's really cool, and there are these paths going through here that we can now walk and think about history and the future and all the things we need to be thinking about when we are learning how to question, learning how to think in university.
That statement, I feel like, sums it up right there.
Right.
Learning how to think.
Right.
Yeah.
Learning how to question. So...
Yeah, the questions that you ask are what influence the answers you
That's right.
have.
Right.
Get.
How deep are those questions?
Yeah.
How nuanced? How contextualized? So where am I? So 2010, we put in the Red Garden. We also put in the Hakona Hall Garden. And the Hakona Garden, we just dug out the dirt from this fountain that there's photos of women in the 40s or 30s taking a break from studying for finals in their great 30s or 40s bathing suits, hanging out in those fountains. And that's probably
hanging
the last
out in
time.
the fountain.
In the fountain.
Cool.
So their legs are in and they're smiling and laughing. And so that space that was once very alive had been very dead for a long time. So it was a nice way to reclaim that space, again, as a place for gathering and community and laughter and enjoyment. And so that space, we decided, since it was smaller and more secluded, it's kind of a private, it's a publicly accessible but more private space. We decided it was going to be a place for herbs, partially because we have staff there, a lot of staff and faculty, and we have also students who live in half the building still as a dormitory. So we wanted a place where people could collect herbs for cooking. We wanted a place that people could collect herbs for making tea during the day, and a place where they could relax and just sit and have a peaceful experience. And so that was what Hakona was, we decided from the beginning would be. And then Red, since we had more space, we decided this would be a food garden largely. And there's a lot of foot traffic through here. So we also wanted it to be a very clearly educational space. So we immediately started with signs about how to compost. We had an art and ecology student in the class who made this beautiful artistic rotating composter where you could actually see a seed moving into a sprout as you turned it.
Wow.
And so people who were in this first class and then the classes that followed really thought about these spaces, where they were and what they could do, and built around that. So as the years passed, both of those spaces have really grown up, and they've been largely maintained through the classes that were offered and through kind of the attention and energies of people who've been really dedicated to keeping them alive. And we've also built some other gardens. So we started one at Project Share, which is a resource and organization for people who are homeless. And we started one on the North Campus with a health organization that was started for that office, but also intended to be publicly accessible. We started one with La Posada on campus, which is the student cafeteria, dormitory cafeteria, and a place where people it's a really good place for people to get more in touch with where their food comes from and the healthiness of their food. And we now have the ones that remain in our purview are those 3 gardens: Red, La Posada, and Hakona.
Awesome. That was an excellent summary.
Oh, I hope it wasn't too long.
No, I just want to check in. How are you doing? Because I know the sun
it's
moved.
A little hot.
And
yeah,
totally. We could move to a different area, because I feel like that was a good encapsulation of the history. And so if there were any specific points that you wanted to talk about maybe in more detail, I could ask specific questions, but it would also be in a separate spot. Perfect. So I wouldn't include it as part of the...
that shot.
Exactly.
Okay, that sounds great.
It might be like